Bruh. Hello, gamers. Oh, thanks for the follow, 6pounder84. And welcome to a new week of working on the GNOME documentation. Oh, I hope everyone had a nice weekend. I did. I started a rewatch of The Expanse. Now that the TV series and the books are done. Well, TV series is not entirely known if it's done, but it's done for the moment. So I decided to restart from the first episode. And been watching a couple of episodes per day, basically. Well, between 2 and 4, because that's what the evening is for. Oh, thanks for the follow, Rednov. Oh. Hi, Joel. Hi, Budin Blado. Oh, yeah, Star Trek. I mean, I honestly want to do a full rewatch with the original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, maybe Voyager, the series that we don't name, Enterprise. Oh, thanks, Rednov. But yeah, doing a Star Trek rewatch is kind of hard. It's a lot of media. Let's just say that. Yeah, the original series is kind of weird to watch. And yeah, it's so weird. To be fair, I started reading a while ago. There are like 3 books, one for each season of the original series, that detail the production background, as well as well, not only for each episode, when it started, like the production process, the writing, how everything got put together for like scenes and costumes and everything else, but also a history of how the series got basically started and got approved by the production company, and how Gene Roddenberry came to write Star Trek, from being he was a cop in Los Angeles. He was working as part of the PR department of the police department. And from then on, he went on to write like TV series procedurals, like westerns and police drama. And then he went on to write this incredibly utopic TV series where there was no crime and no money and everything, and everyone lived together in harmony and peace and stuff like that. It was so interesting. But yeah, I feel like reading those 3 books essentially makes up for me not wanting to rewatch the original series. It's just that I never liked it that much. I watched it, but I never liked it that much. I honestly started watching the Star Trek with The Next Generation, and then once I got to Deep Space Nine, I knew which series was the best. So now I just rewatched Deep Space Nine. Though, to be fair, I also watch Discovery because I like dumb fun and series that are incredibly melodramatic. And I also watched Picard, the first season, and I can only recommend everyone who likes Star Trek and also likes Galaxy Quest to watch Lower Decks, because that is the most Star Trek series of Star Trek ever made. So if you want a recommendation from a lifelong Star Trek fan, Lower Decks is the best Star Trek series of recent memory. You can find it on, I think it worldwide is on Amazon Prime. Otherwise, in the US, I have no idea where it is. Probably on the Paramount channel. But yeah. But if you want science fiction for grown-ups, then definitely watch The Expanse. The Expanse is the best science fiction series of the past nearly 20 years. You can jump from Battlestar Galactica to The Expanse, basically, and skip everything that happened in the middle. The Expanse is a much better series than anything that was out in recent memory. I mean, Battlestar Galactica is an amazing series, and I loved it, and I even loved the final episode, even though I know that a lot of people hated it. I honestly loved it. I loved every single bit of Battlestar Galactica. The Expanse is above and beyond that. It's amazing, and I love it because it is super not interested in the tropes of the science fiction first contact / alien / high tech stuff. It's all about humans, and it's all about conflicts between ways of life and economic systems and political systems, and it's great. But I also read all the books, so I think I mean, reading the books is great. I mean, the first book is probably a little bit the if you don't get on board with the premise of the first book, then you're probably gonna have a bad time. But once you get on board, everything else is incredible quality. So, again, another recommendation if you want. This one is on Amazon Prime everywhere, because Amazon bought the rights for the first 3 seasons, and then co-produced the series for the latter 3 seasons. So it's there if people want to watch it. And then read the books, because the books are amazing. I have 3 copies of the first book. The first one is on my Kindle. The second one is Dead Trees version with the signed by the authors, and then I have the 10 years special edition that is very purple in hardcover, and it's really nice. So kind of obsessed with that. Oh. So on Friday, I ended up cleaning up and doing a bunch of fixes to the tagged entry widget that I'm experimenting with for libadwaita, and it was a very productive stream. Ended up with something that I'm okay with as a first iteration of the implementation. It has to survive the gauntlet of a code review and has to survive the gauntlet of a design review. So it's not done yet. I'm gonna open a merge request this week anyway, maybe later today. I have a bunch of things I want to fix first, like the implementation of the GTK buildable interface. But last week, what happened behind the scenes was that I got finally a merge request for porting the examples of the developer documentation from C and Python to Vala as well. I haven't merged it because it needed a few iterations as well, and I have a couple of nitpicks on the way it's done, because I noticed that it required a couple of fixes to the existing examples. And that happened because I wrote the examples straight into the restructure text and I didn't actually test them. And if you watched my previous streams, you will have realized that I have to check the documentation like 90% of the time, because one of the reasons why I try to commit everything to Git and then document everything is that so I don't have to remember it. And what happened then is that there are a couple of issues with the examples, especially in Python. Oh, hi, Jeff. And some of the examples in Python are iffy. They have a couple of broken things. So one of the things I wanted to do today, or at the very least try and do today, was extracting the examples from the source code and then adding them to separate files that I can include in the restructure text. And in order to do that, well, once I've done that, the idea is that we can run the examples under the CI pipeline that we also use for building the website, so that we don't unintentionally introduce like broken code that cannot be copy pasted. The entire point of the website is to allow an easy way to copy paste working code into your project. And if that code doesn't work, then we failed. So what I want to work on today was trying to figure out a way to extract those examples, put them into files inside the repository, and have a CI job that ran Flake or whatever, or PyTest or any other checker that at the very least guarantees that we are writing valid Python. Another thing that we could do is literally running each example in an automated fashion. At least load the code, make sure it's valid, and then even if it's not running, at the very least it's valid. The main problem with that is that we are gonna have issues with running GUI code inside CI pipeline. That is kind of meh. I don't particularly like it because it requires running things under a display server, so running X at the very least. But without going that deep into the rabbit hole, at the very least have a way to run the test under Flake or under Black, or anything that parses Python, and we ensure that at the very least it's not breaking. I didn't introduce some typo there. I can only do that for Python, because doing that for C is more complicated. The C examples are building C examples is complicated. You have to inject a lot more code, and you have to hide a lot more stuff. It would be a lot easier to use something like I don't know, something like some form of templating engine that basically took a fragment of the code that just dumped it into an existing C file and then tried to build the C file. But it's complicated. That's one thing that I wanted to do. The other thing was, and it's probably a little bit easier, so we'll probably start with that. It's being able to build the developer documentation website locally and install it locally. So one of the things that have been requested, even in comments on the stream on YouTube, is the ability to build the developer documentation website, install it in install it locally in some directory, and then have Devhelp be able to read its content. So not just being able to build the HTML like result, but also the index and everything else. Which requires us to look at how Devhelp works. Luckily for us, I am also the maintainer of Devhelp, which means that I am at least moderately responsible for everything in this pipeline. So let me move to my desktop. And there we go. So, okay, we have stuff here. Let's switch back to the main branch and rebase. Okay. So, new branch. So, how is the developer documentation website put together? First of all, it's divided in two sections. The first one is the static bit, which is what will appear if you do, let me see here. If you go to developer.gnome.org, you will see this landing page with a bunch of links that are useful to people coming to this page for the first time. And this is contained inside the static section of the website. So you can see, yeah. We have a README, we have a document style guide, and blah blah blah. That's fine. The second part is the source, which is the part of the website that is generated by Sphinx from restructured text. And it is what you see when you go into the documentation section. all of this is copied into the GitLab pages for GNOME by the CI pipeline. So we do this, we go into the build. We have technically 3 jobs. The first one is a link check on the files for licensing information. Essentially, we want to ensure that every file that we install, that we provide, and we have in the developer documentation has a valid license, and it's we don't add stuff that we don't have licensing and authorship information. In the past, we ended up adding a bunch of files like screenshots and even fonts, and there was no licensing information for those, and that is kind of problematic, especially when people want to take the same assets and reuse them for their copy of the documentation. It's also something that I started doing for all my projects. All my projects now follow the reuse specification, which is add a license identifier using the SPDX specification from the Linux Foundation. So I don't need to add the licensing blurb that you will see in many projects. So in this case, this file is licensed under CC0, which is public domain, because it doesn't contain anything. And the copyright is also the copyright text is also machine parsable. So the copyright is 2021 GNOME Foundation, because I wrote this while I was working for the GNOME Foundation. So this is the first job. The second job is the important one that builds the entire thing. It installs Sphinx, the Furo theme that we use, and the Sphinx tab extension. Then runs the build script and copies the output to the this directory and stores it as a CI artifact. And then we have the pages, the pages job that takes that directory, renames it as public, and then publishes it, deploys it as a GitLab page. So the entire thing gets copied onto storage that is used, is accessed by a web server. Whenever you do a merge request for the developer documentation website, you will run the reuse and you will run the build jobs. So we check the files you added for licensing information, and also we build it so that you can check the artifacts and see the render of the changes you just made. This is what we've been doing since I've started streaming this work. Whereas the pages job only runs on the main branch, so it will only deploy the new website when we merge the merge request into the main development branch, and only if both jobs have succeeded. So we don't accidentally overwrite the website with something that is broken. So what I want to do is essentially take this and have a new script that is not just a build script, but it's the install script. So the build script is very simple. It runs, if it cannot find Sphinx, then it aborts, because you cannot build the directory and you cannot build the website. And then generates the website under the documentation directory, and then copies the static files into the root, so that when you get at the end of the process, what happens is that the documentation generated by Sphinx goes into a subdirectory, and then the static stuff gets into the root, which presents you with the landing page. This is pretty trivial. So what we want to do is have something like this, except it doesn't copy the static bits, and it generates the documentation with Sphinx into a separate directory. And that separate directory gets copied into an installation location. From a user perspective, you probably want to install this into the xdg data home directory, so that you don't need to do a global installation using like sudo or something like that. But that is not enough for tools like Devhelp, well, for Devhelp especially, to actually show you the website. So if you've never seen Devhelp, you cannot see here because it cannot run, because I don't have it installed locally. Well, I don't have the flat-packed version of the build. I only have the local one that I use when I'm hacking. So let's go and do what you would do normally if you started contributing to GNOME. So you go on the Software Center and you type Devhelp. You probably don't want the nightly build, because let's be clear. And then we go on to the FlatHub build, and we install it. And now that we've installed it, we can run it. So currently, as you might notice, we don't have anything in our installation. Only the tracker documentation. I don't know why, for some reason. But the way Devhelp works is that in order to find the documentation for something, for any library, it will look into a set of directories for a specific file that has the same name of the directory and ends with .devhelp2 or devhelp2gz or devhelp. That file is what is used to generate this index. Let me see if I can find you. Yep. BTK4. BTK4. Where it is? Yep, here it is. Oh god. Yeah, I cannot see. Very nice. Late rendered. There. Let's see if I can get the text editor to render it correctly. Okay, so we go into projects, gi.gen here. This is one of my Scratch builds for GTK. Let's see. This is gonna make GTK source view very, very angry with me because it's a single line. But yeah, no, this is definitely not gonna work. So let's see if I can get. So all you see is like a bunch of XML gobbledygook. It's terrible, but all it does is give out the information on how to build. On how to structure the documentation. So you will see a bunch of sub sections, and then you will see links to functions. So like keyboard type function, name, GTK assistant prepend page, and the link to that. So this is a function. Function methods are exactly the same because Devhelp 2 is Devhelp file format is not great, but yeah. And then the link here. So out of this XML disaster, Devhelp will build up a structure like this. Let's see if I can get no, I cannot do that. But yeah, in order to get more documentation, you typically want to have the an extension for the GNOME SDK runtime. So whenever GNOME builds a runtime, it builds at the minimum 3 runtimes. The first one is the platform, which contains all the shared libraries that are needed to run an application. Then it creates the SDK runtime. The SDK one is the one you use to build your application against, and it's also what you use to provide all the building tools, or like compilers and the introspection data and whatever else. For instance, GNOME Builder depends not on the platform runtime, but depends on the SDK runtime, because of course it needs all the tools to build stuff. Devhelp does that as well, but on top of that, it depends on the third runtime that is typically created by GNOME, which is the SDK docs extension. Whenever we build the runtimes, we build with every component with the documentation enabled, and then we take the documentation and shove it into an extension to the SDK runtime, which means that you don't need to download documentation every time. Also because documentation typically is large, because the text compresses well in many cases, but then you get like images, and then you get a bunch of other additional files. I mean, just to give you an idea of how big the documentation of GTK4 is, it's 66 megs. And that's just GTK. You also need GDK, and you also need GSK for GTK4. So it's not small. It's not huge, because 66 megs is not an inordinate amount of data, but, and again, it's text, even though it's HTML stuff, so it in theory should compress reasonably well. But it's also a ton of files, and a ton of files under OS3 means a ton of hard links, and so on and so forth. The nice bit is that even when we change the documentation, it stays, we don't change the entire documentation all the time, so it diffs pretty well as well. So every time we do a new release, unless we change a ton of stuff, it usually the delta is small enough that you can do an upgrade without having to download a ton of data. So what we need for Devhelp to work is a Devhelp file. Otherwise, well, first of all, Devhelp will not find your documentation. Will completely ignore it because it doesn't know how to structure it. And second of all, it will use it to structure the documentation here. Which is what we need for that. So the missing bit is, how do we take a Sphinx documentation like website and make it so Devhelp can view it? For that, we need to add a Devhelp generator. Once again, we are lucky because Sphinx has a Devhelp extension that generates the Devhelp file. Now, I looked at it, and sadly, it generates Sphinx. It generates Devhelp 1 files, which is, let's just say, suboptimal. I honestly want to remove the support for Devhelp 1 files because it's useless. Sadly, there are people that are still using it, like libxml2 still uses Devhelp 1 files instead of the newer Devhelp 2 files. When I say newer, I mean that Devhelp 2 was introduced 15 years ago, if I remember correctly. And it superseded Devhelp 1, which is older than that. It's 17 years old. And nobody should have used Devhelp 1 files in 17 years because they're bad. So theoretically speaking, I really need to modify this module to generate Devhelp 2 files. That goes onto my to-do list. Whoa, okay. It's taking so long. Yeah, that wasn't a great idea. But anyway, I'll add that later on when GNOME text editor recovers from my dumbassery. But yeah. So ideally, we should not be using... I mean, we should be using this because it's the only thing that we get. But ideally, we need to modify this so that it generates Devhelp 2 files. The main difference between Devhelp 1 and Devhelp 2 files is that Devhelp 1 has a function keyword, which theoretically matches functions only, whereas the Devhelp 2 files have a keyword element that can be tagged as a function, property, signal, enumeration, type, whatever, class. So it's more generic and more geared towards documenting complex APIs. In this case, it's not strictly necessary because we don't actually care. And to be fair, both Devhelp and Devhelp 2 files are bad. They are extremely verbose without being exhaustive in what they're describing. So my plan is to change Devhelp in GNOME 43. I don't have time in GNOME 42 to do this, but for the next cycle, GNOME 43, I want to modify it to have a whole new UI. Use GTK4, use the new WebKit for GTK4, and also introduce a new Devhelp index format that is not so bad. I will keep Devhelp 2 support, but I will try to remove Devhelp 1 support because it's nearly 20 years old and it's really not good. But yeah, let's so the way we are going to make this work is going to be okay, see if I can get of course, because I'm not inside of the box. Okay, now I can do okay. Let's install this. Okay. Okay, we already have it installed. I probably installed it like ages ago. That's fine. Okay, so I have the Devhelp generator installed. And then I will have to modify the configuration file for this to include let's see, Sphinx rib and then try to run the build and see what happens. Aha, okay. I don't have that module. Okay, let's see. It's underscore. This one should work. No. What the fudge? Okay. Let's see if we have help here. Develop builder. Okay. This one. Okay, let's see. Yep, now it's working. I guess writing that stuff inside the document, the README was far too much. Okay. So let's see if we can find okay. I will never learn the syntax for find. Okay. Okay. So this one works as a separate build step. So yeah. So I will have to do. I keep running build. I keep trying to run Vim. So I will have to do something like this. Well, let's run it on the command line for now. So it's gonna be Sphinx build. Then it's going to be Devhelp. Okay. And then it's going to be source. Wow. Instead of grasping, it's throws. Yeah, so it's going to be Sphinx build, Devhelp, source, then it's going to be build, Devhelp, there it is. So let's see. And there it is. So it generates the HTML exactly like you would. Probably with a slight twist, but... And then it generates the develop file here. So it's fine. So let's see if we can do what it recommends. So first of all, we create a local directory for our books. This is one of the paths that Devhelp will look into whenever searching for books in documentation. A book in Devhelp parlance is a Devhelp file and a bunch of HTML, and that Devhelp file gives you the index for every file in the every HTML file there. So instead of doing this, we can move build Devhelp there. Well, need to make books. And then we move build Devhelp local share Devhelp books GNOME developer documentation, and then we run Devhelp. Which doesn't find anything. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh yeah, of course. When I was saying that it has a lot of Devhelp has a lot of problems with this format, is that the name of the file has to match the name of the directory. So we cannot just call it this way because the file doesn't have spaces in them. So let's go here and we go into local share Devhelp books, and then we rename this to this is another thing that will have to be changed. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay. So this is an interesting bug in Devhelp. Let's see if I can get open a project. And then we have to go into select a folder. And instead of going into the clone that we have, Devhelp. There we go. So Devhelp is composed of two parts. One is the application. You can see here. So you get an application and then you get a library. The library contains the logic to load the books and list them and search through them, but it also contains a bunch of GUI bits, which is one of the reasons why I'm planning on redoing most of this stuff. Because, okay, this is a classic error. What people tell you to do, what GNOME maintainers and other like developers will tell you to do, is if you have an application, try to split the business logic into a library and then split the application code, the GUI code, into a separate bit, and then use the GUI code to call into the library. Normally this this suggestion is very well intentioned, and in general I think you should follow it. There is a but. The but is you should not do this if you're planning to install the library for other people to use. If you're installing a library for other applications to use, you should not include the GUI bits. The GUI bits should not be there, should be part of your application. And I know that the tendency is, but I want to provide like widgets and I want to provide additional utility classes that let you build the application, let you build a consistent user interface. That is shit. That is a shit advice, and it's a very shitty thing to do, and it will screw you pretty much instantaneously. The reason why it will do that is that it will lock you into supporting a version of the toolkit, which means now you have to break API just to just update the version of the toolkit. But also it will lock you into supporting a specific user interface, like structure. unless you make all your widget completely opaque, so like inherit from GTK widget and never expose anything, which is possible to do with GTK4, but it's not possible to do with GTK3. With GTK3, you will have to inherit from existing widgets, and if you do that, then you're locked into a very specific UI, at which point you will not be able to change the application, redesign it, and change the structure of the UI, for instance, to insert a new state or a new kind of view. And by doing that, you are going to be screwed. It will require that you break the API every time you want to do this, which is fine if you say, okay, I don't have any stability guarantee on this. But at that point, why are you doing this? Why are you providing an API to build a copy of your application, like from a GUI perspective? Why are you providing an API to build a copy of your application? Are you seriously telling me that you are not only going to maintain your application, but every single other application that makes use of that library? Because that's what you're signing up for. And it's a mistake. I did that mistake with GNOME Dictionary in 2005, 2006. And I was able, after more than 10 years, to undo that mistake by basically saying, okay, nobody's using this GUI library to build GNOME Dictionary lookalikes. So let's remove it. Let's pretend it never existed. Sadly, with Devhelp, that didn't happen. That actually, what happened was that the various maintainers just doubled down on that particular approach, which is a bad approach. It's just unmaintainable. Unless you don't care about other people using the library, in which case, what the hell are you doing anyway? So it's pointless, right? And if it's pointless, why you're signing up to do more work than you should? Okay, so Devhelp will look into right. Okay, it will look into these directories. So technically speaking, you should be fine. Let's try and build it. Oh, of course. It should download the runtime. Yeah. Install. Thank you. You shouldn't need to get into a toolbox. Okay. Should be fine now. You'll succeeded. Let's try and run it. Oh, good. Okay. So this is the local build. So it doesn't find anything. Oh, this is interesting. So I think, well, let me double check one thing first. Because you never know. I might have already cherry-picked the commit that removed the Devhelp. Because if we remove that, then we are kind of screwed. No, I shouldn't remove that. Okay, so it's just a bug then. Or probably not a bug, but it messy because it doesn't have access to the local directory, the home directory. So let's try and see. Yeah, file system host. Let's see. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this as a actual commit. Because I'm not going to give access to the entire directory, home directory. Okay, so no, it's not working. It should be fine though. Okay. Oh, unless I'm running the Devhelp version, so it's fine. Let's see. Preferences. Oh no, I need to run this. Of course. Okay. Yeah. We're running the development version of the Okay, this is weird. This is an interesting issue. So instead of going into the documentation, we'll have to look at why this is not working. So technically speaking, when running under Flatpak, it will look into a specific subdirectory. Because we tell Flatpak to expose the host file system as under the run host directory, then it will try to add all the directories from the outside of the sandbox. And of course it will do so as read-only. Now also we should probably do like this as well. The overall idea is that you want to have access to the file system because that's where the documentation typically is. But you don't want to have access to the entire home directory because that's kind of pointless. Like, yeah, there's no reason. theoretically, yes, there is a reason why you want to do this. If you are installing documentation locally, you want to install it not for Devhelp, but for your home directory. So in theory, adding this one isn't a bad idea, though I would probably limit it to the XDG data home directory, not the entire home directory. The problem is it will try to do, the Flatpak will try to sandbox that particular area so that you don't end up writing into the home directory. You want this Flatpak sandbox will override the environment variables for the home directory, so that everything gets contained, which is also why it won't find this. Of course, it won't find this because XDG data home will not point to your home .config .local / share, but it will point to var app Devhelp share whatever. So of course it doesn't find it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, of course it doesn't find it. The XDG data home environment variable is going to be changed, so it will look into the wrong place. So if we want to do this, we will have to do something like this. Yeah. Devhelp, then data. Yeah. Books. And then we can move local share Devhelp books under Devhelp books. Doesn't find it anyway. This point is where I would usually break up the some more debugging information. Okay. It would be great if Devhelp had a way to add more directories instead of just, or at the very least, list all the directories. Oh, hi, Saptarshi. I didn't see you there. So okay, so let's do this. The good old okay debugging API, debugging by printf. Okay. Then we have to go here. Sorry, in the build preferences, environment, runtime environment. First of all, let's disable that annoying. Then we do bug equals full. Then we go back. Let's try and build it. I should definitely change the stream title. This is weird. What the hell? It's not running. What the f... Okay, I'm puzzled now. Okay, this is puzzling. It's not adding the environment variables. What the hell? Okay, this is weird. Okay. Why is Builder not doing the right thing here? Maybe I'm using the wrong environment? Okay, let's try this. Oh, now it's working. Okay. So, yeah, as you can see, we are in the directories under the Devhelp location, the var app or GNOME Devhelp devel. So we need to move var app or GNOME Devhelp devel. Data KTRP Devhelp. Oops. And then we can go here and we can copy GNOME Devhelp data Devhelp books. Okay. And there we go. Finally. Okay. The main problem is that it doesn't show anything here. I mean, it's not that it doesn't show it, but it's probably broken. So it seems that the Sphinx extension to build Devhelp files is broken. And likely nobody noticed because nobody's using it. Which is annoying. Yes, it is very annoying. Okay. Yes. So, This is exceedingly annoying. But this requires us to write our own extension for Sphinx, which is not really what I signed up for. Though it's kind of unavoidable at this point. There you go. Still an open and in progress merge request. Okay. Yeah. Oh, last change. Oh, a year ago. Fudge, and it's still broken. Okay, so. Failure. Okay, we failed that. That is definitely not great. Oh, I mean, yeah. So this stuff will have to wait because there are too many moving parts to this. There's Sphinx, there's Devhelp, and then the Devhelp extension, and then a bunch of other stuff there. Okay. Not great. I'll have to admit, not great, but yeah. So let's see. Sphinx green grid. File format. the index, which is poorly suited for non-API references. There is an open merge request. For the Devhelp format that it's stuck and hasn't been updated in 1 year at the time. Yeah, no Devhelp file 2 is generated because it generates Devhelp 1. Yeah, it's always annoying when this happens and people are trying to use the tools that are ostensibly precisely for that functionality, and turns out that there's something broken in the middle. See a little bit of right. A little bit of a review just to as a palette cleanser. Yeah, this one. Oh, come on. This one too. View. I understand perfectly why this is a pain in the ass. I'm being a pain in the ass here, but because something happens to me a lot. I start fixing something and I realize that there is another thing that needs to be fixed. This is why I use git add with -p all the time to isolate chunks, because I know that I will have a bunch of changes that are completely unrelated. I mean, yeah, it's kind of ADD, but Okay. Here we go. Yeah, as a palette cleanser, doing a little code review is great, especially whenever something that you invest like an hour on something and then you realize it doesn't work before going back or switching topic or whatever. Doing a little bit of a quick task that takes very little mental effort is great to trick your brain into thinking it has achieved something something more positive than that. So you end up with building on positive on a positive effort instead of building on trying to reclaim a negative one. Little tricks with Emanuele on how to trick your brain into working properly. It's yeah, 20 years of this stuff. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has this kind of problems. Yeah, we have a bunch of other issues in the developer documentation. That is a good thing. Okay. So, wait. What? Tutorials, application ID. Right here. Yeah, these are the old rules. So the actual documentation for that is not here. It's in docs, GPK, GIO. It's in the application. Yeah. And it's in the application ID is valid. Yep. So we should actually do this. Let's okay. No. So we're gonna stash this, and then we're gonna switch to mining, and then we're gonna switch to issue 28. So we are going to go into the tutorials, application ID, and then yeah. So okay. application ID. You should read the documentation of the application. This is not markdown. This is not markdown. And this. Copy. And paste. The documentation for G application ID is valid. The hyphen should not be hyphens are allowed. You should not use them in your application identifier, application ID. Right. As they are not supported with all warnings that I okay. This one should I don't think you can add a note to this, to how's it called, to a list without breaking stuff. Let's see, there are a couple of examples here. Or maybe add a warning, like a true warning. This. If you are using a real DNS name as the basis for your application ID, and the name contains an hyphen, you should replace it with underscore or instance from 7zip.org to or 7zip. Yeah, this one is probably as good as it's gonna get. Okay. So let's add this. Verify the equals. Mention that hyphens are expected, but storage and provide example is number 28. And then we can open a merge request. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can look at the build as usual. So while we're not doing this, let's go back to main and close a bunch of stuff. So the other thing that I wanted to do today was before the fiasco of the Devhelp Detour, I wanted to go inside the examples and see if we can extract them from the restructure text and instead put them into an actual file. So okay. So technically speaking, we should be able to include external files inside. Let's see. Right. Let's see if I can get a separate. There we go. So yeah, we can use the include directive to do this. So for instance, let's see. Yeah, the main problem is that we are doing it inside an example that has a code block. And I don't think we can do that. Because it's not. We could use a what? Oh, maybe we can. So let's see if we can do this. Okay, we take this. And then we do this, new folder, samples. No, that's sample. Okay. And this one was custom button XML. So new file, custom button XML, and we store it like this. And then inside this we do include samples custom button XML. Let's see what happens. Doesn't seem to be complaining. Patient tutorials, beginners, button. Okay. It doesn't seem to be working. Because of course it doesn't. Yeah. We could do this. It will include maybe this will work. Yeah. The literal include should in theory work. Of course, I have no idea if that will work with the code tabs extension. Yes. So if I do a literal include with a language to tell it to do this, it will work. But a code tab example will likely not work. Yeah, I don't think it will work. I don't think it will work. So we cannot include this. Oh, hi, Alatira. Nice for you to join. So the structure here is not entirely in our favor. because it won't really work for us. I mean, it will work if we have a code block at the top level, like for XML stuff. And that is probably still a good thing to do. I should also move the images inside inside this area so that we don't have a massive grab bag of images that are splattered across the entire structure of the API the documentation. But they are local to the specific section that we are documenting. You may see here we go down 2 levels in a weird place. But as soon as we go into code tabs, which is where we put all our code examples, well, not all our code examples, but a lot of our code examples, then it gets complicated to add a separate file. Like, let's try this. So this one is default widget Python. So samples, new file, default. It's going to be button default widget I. And then we do this. Okay, and then we go back here and we say examples default widget I. Space here. And we build it. Let me save it and restart. So there are no warnings at the very least, but I don't think it will include it. Let's see. We are in the default widget here. And we have the, yeah, it will just add literal include. Because it's nested here. Maybe if we denest it. No. Yep. No, it will warn. Yeah, that one won't work. Sadly. Oh, thanks for the follow, DX. This is disappointing. It's a lot more disappointing than I expected. The interaction between the code tab, the tabs extension, and the inclusion directive isn't what I expected. So we cannot extract the examples and make them work separately. So we cannot validate them either. Which is not great. Okay. That is so disappointing. That is really disappointing. Oh. We are 2 strikes. Sorry, 2 outs for 2 balls. That is Trying to think of other options. Because I don't want to lose the tabs. The tabs are the only thing that makes browsing the code examples actually reasonable. Extracting the XML is already moderately fine. Mostly because usually XML like samples are kind of annoying to include and to write. But the fact that we cannot deal with that particular the particular union of code tabs and included files. Yeah, it's annoying. Oh well. So, the idea of running a linter or anything else on the examples is going to be scratched, sadly. Because we don't have any other option. Yeah. Yeah, because literal include is how you would do this, generally speaking. But in this case, it cannot work. Let's see if the documentation, tutorials, application ID. Okay, yeah, this one works. Oh, why is not? This is what? What the hell? It's not. Probably because I didn't leave 2 spaces. The space sensitivity of restructured text is kind of a problem. Again. Still, the warning is, I think, is a good. Yeah, having a warning is fine. And there should be a note here. Okay. Yeah. It's annoying when stuff doesn't work. Yeah, I honestly cannot think of another way around this. Because it's, yeah, there is no way around it. Because the code example. Yeah, no. I'd have to look at modifying the tabs extension and see if I can add the ability to do a literal include. I mean, I look at the merge request in the Sphinx tab extension. I can see they have done some work to allow directives to be specified within a code tab, a tab. But clearly literal include doesn't work that way. Maybe it works. I mean, it's a directive there. Oh, wait, what? Oh, that worked. Okay. Huh, that worked. It doesn't work for code tab, but it works for tab. Are you serious? Yeah. Are you serious right now? So let's try this. Okay. Okay. Samples. Here's literal include directives to include XML and the samples. So we can have link max hr or break. See what happens now. Oh, this is this is so weird. Okay. Okay, let's see what happens. Too big. So, oh, the reuse will probably die because I don't have any licensing information on the examples now. Oh, this is, if this works, is an impressive turnaround. I did not expect this. It will take a little bit. Let's try reuse length. Yep. Okay. I don't want to add the the main problem is if I add the licensing terms and the copyright to each sample, it will appear in the the final result, the final website. So I should not add that, but I can do this. Files, source, tutorials, beginners, samples, XML, copyright 2022, license 0.0, and same thing for the Python files. The deb5 file allows us to specify the copyright information, copyright and licensing information for files that, for instance, are binaries like images. You have two options. One is include the, well, no, you have three options. For source files, you can include the licensing and copyright information directly into the file. Source text, plain text, whatever, it's fine. Then you have binary files. Binary files, you have the option of creating a file that has the exact same name but ends in .license, and the .license contains the licensing and copyright information. Or you have the third option that applies to everything, which is use a deb5 file inside the root directory. Yep. And this one allows you to specify the licensing and copyright information for files without having to modify the files or add additional files to the Git repository. Yeah, exactly, the reuse. But the build succeeded, so maybe we can try it anyway. So documentation, tutorials, beginners, and we go to button. So we get the custom button that is included from an external file. We need to change the title of the tab, but it's correct. The style is different. It's probably the style has changed and needs to be fixed. But yeah, this comes from an external file. Success. We win. So we just need to fix that. But other than that, it's fine. Yeah, because this one is a literal include, and it's probably gonna modify the stacking of the style. But yeah, if we instead we do this, it should look exactly the same. Yeah, and we can start extracting the examples. Huh. I honestly didn't think it would work. If I want to be entirely honest. Yeah, now it's passing. Yep. Holy crap. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting thing to find out. Okay, this one is going to be a draft because it's incomplete. So I don't want to end up merging it by accident. Let's double check that the yeah. Let's double check that this one worked. It's not printing out the information. This is weird. Oh yeah, unknown directive type information. Blah blah blah. Yeah, it's not information. It's C also. Yeah. Okay, so let's fix this up. Switch back to 28, and then we can close these. We reload this. There's no information. Let's add C also. Okay. Lots of directives. Oh, hi, Gunibird. Is it wanted that we can see your mouse cursor? Yes. I have a terrible habit of moving the cursor around in very especially when I'm nervous or when I don't know what to do with my hands. I will start moving the cursor around, and it's very annoying. I tried looking at I included it in one of my test runs for the streaming last month. I did a few test rounds to see how OBS worked and other things like that. And the first couple of them had the mouse moving around, the mouse pointer moving around. And I realized just how much I move the pointer without thinking. It's so annoying. It was so annoying. I would have killed myself. Just nail my hand to the desk. Yeah, you honestly, it's better that you cannot see it, because it's like as I'm talking to you right now, I'm literally moving my mouse in circles. You can see it because it will occasionally trigger the hover state on a bunch of stuff, and yeah, and I don't even notice that I'm doing it. It's just how I am. It's a nervous tick. Probably because I'm Italian and I'm not moving my hands that much when I'm talking. That you don't see. I'm trying to keep my hands like out of camera, but I realize that when I talk, I actually move my mouse a lot. So yeah, that's that's better if you don't see it. Okay. Let's see this. So let's see if the build added the C also, so I can merge it. And yeah, C also. And it links to the application ID is valid. Good. So I can actually merge this. One less thing to think about. There are a couple of dub file. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure I want to add the file documentation to the developer documentation website. It's not something for not something for developers. It's something for people that are hosting their stuff on GNOME infrastructure. And main site lacks dark mode. I don't know. Rename the landing page because the documentation section supports dark mode. Okay. Right. So, yeah. Before I end up making more of a mess than this, I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. Let's give 5 minutes. It seems I cannot. So couple minutes. Nope. It seems that I cannot create a poll because Twitch isn't working properly today. So I'm gonna ask, should I continue splitting out the samples? Yes or no? Otherwise, we're gonna close the stream here because it's been 2 hours and 20 minutes. And people have other things to do, maybe. But if you want to keep going, I can just continue splitting the sample code from the tutorials. It's gonna take a little bit, but should be fine. Oh. Yeah, in the meantime, I'm out of tea, of course. Anyway, it seems that everyone is happy for me to end the stream here, so I guess we can actually do that. Let's go back to my big head. So, well, it wasn't a complete loss actually today. I ended up hitting the Devhelp extension problem that it's generating the old Devhelp file, which isn't great, and also it's kind of broken unless you're generating an API reference, apparently. So we'll have to figure something out for that. Otherwise, the ability to install the developer documentation website for offline browsing using Devhelp is not gonna be doable. There's the other problem of you cannot really install locally if you're using Devhelp from Flatpak. So we might have to add the developer website to the SDK for the documentation extension. Develop a never-ending love story. Yeah. GNOME 43. GNOME 43 will be better. I promise you that. New UI, better way of finding Devhelp books, maybe even a new index format that doesn't suck like the Devhelp files. But yeah. I broke the user shared GTK doc in Nightleaf. Yeah, that's fine. I don't care. I honestly don't care about GTK doc. All the documentation from GI docgen ends up in user shared doc. And stuff that is technically speaking not an API reference should go into Devhelp books. Though, again, it's kind of a shitty thing to do. Using an application-specific location for documentation that is strictly speaking just a bunch of HTML files that can be browsed with a web browser it's not a thing to do. Yeah, I'm only finding the tracker documentation. I'm not finding anything else, so but that's fine. We should revitalize RTFM. RTFM was the small tool that Christian wrote for documentation browsing, right? I think I seem to remember something called RTFM. Yeah. So basically, just to give an idea, just to give an idea of what it is that I want to do with Devhelp is I want to redo the how's it called? The entire UI. So you get a landing page with a grid of books instead of the current emptiness with a sidebar that goes on forever. Instead, you get a proper grid of books. And since theoretically speaking, the Devhelp file, well, we can modify the Devhelp file to include an icon for the book. This way, the GTK documentation will have the GTK logo. The I don't know, GWeather documentation will have the GWeather logo. More libraries and more libraries should have a logo that is generated by the maintainer, so that we can have a specific branding for that project. But anyway, if it doesn't have a logo, we fall back to the Devhelp icon, whatever. And then you select one of those from the grid instead of the random sidebar of doom that we currently have. So you have not only have a grid for all the installed stuff, but also if you don't have anything installed, we can have a landing page essentially that tells you there are no available documentation. There is no available documentation. Click here to install the SDK docs extension, at which point Devhelp will load it up. And the other thing is if it's running as a Flatpak. Otherwise, we will have the ability to define distro-specific instructions. So, for instance, if you install Devhelp on Fedora, it will tell you install these packages to do this, and so on and so forth. I think we do have a way to install a Flatpak from a Flatpak, or at the very least we have a way to escape from the sandbox and tell it to install that extension. It's the same thing that Builder does when installing the dependencies. We can poke, basically use a service outside of the sandbox or whatever. It's also the same mechanism we use for update yourself. Yeah, Builder does Flatpak spawn, so yeah, we could probably do the same. We should probably be doing the same, because at the end of the day we are just installing an extension for that. And yeah, we probably need an extension for portals to do that as well. I mean, it's kind of useful. If you have an application that is a Flatpak and you want to be able to add more stuff to that, then you ask the user to install that. Otherwise, if push comes to shove, we can literally just print out the command line to install the version of the how's it called? All the version of the SDK docs extension, so you can install it from a terminal, whatever. I don't care. Ideally, it should be possible to, whenever you install Devhelp, you should also be able to install the docs extension automatically from GNOME software. At least theoretically. I mean, it's not like installing the debug extension. It's just installing the docs extension. But yeah, and another thing that's going to change in Devhelp 43 is going to be the libdevelop is going to be drastically reduced in scope. You only get the API to load the books from specific locations. You will be able to add paths that you know contain documentation, for instance. So you can have a configuration interface that points Devhelp to that specific path. But there won't be any UI anymore in libdevelop because that was a massive mistake. And the other thing that will happen is that the application is going to be completely self-contained. So yeah, no more shared UI. Everyone can do whatever they want. Because that's kind of the important thing. I mean, you want the data structures, you want a definition of the book, the ability to search you want the ability to define a book collection, the ability to find a book inside a collection, the ability to find a symbol inside a book. That's the entirety of what you want. You also want list models and stuff like that, so you can observe stuff that changes, like new books added or books removed or books updated. But you don't want a notebook widget that contains a bunch of tabs that contain a bunch of WebKit GTK widgets to display the content. What the hell? If you're doing this, you probably already have a bunch of like viewers to display the documentation, to display HTML. I don't need to include a bunch of stuff there. So that's going to change. And I'm sorry about Anjuta, and I'm sorry about GNOME Builder. I'll help out with GNOME Builder, because I know that that's important. But I honestly don't care about Anjuta. If the Anjuta developers want to deal with that, they will deal with that. But yeah, gonna be a different thing. Anyway, yeah, I think this is the point where I thank everyone for watching this stream and for staying with me while I discovered the limits of Sphinx extensions. There will be another stream on Wednesday. I think I need to double check, because I might have. No, it's gonna be fine. Yeah, Wednesday is fine. Yeah, there's gonna be a stream on Wednesday. We'll probably be back on documentation, this time writing documentation instead of figuring out how to break the website in new and interesting ways. And then on Friday, I will go back to writing GTK widgets and writing libadwaita widgets. Hopefully, we will have a merge request with the first round of reviews and first iterations of the design from the design team. Fingers crossed. And that's it, really. If you're watching this on YouTube, then remember to like and comment and subscribe, so you will be notified whenever I publish the VOD. Otherwise, if you want to see this stream live, just follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/ibassi. Again, I stream on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. For everything else, have a great rest of your day, and I shall see you all on Wednesday. Bye.